Again, thank you for that beautiful song, and especially focusing on miracles, which is part and parcel of what we'll be talking about this morning. My name is Reverend Keith Horwitz. I am a minister from Agape, and I'm going to kind of let you into my world a little bit on a lot of levels. The level of nubs and flubs and my imperfections. I'm going to let you in on that a little bit because I think it's important. I used to be one of those people years ago that kept things like really secret. And I wanted to kind of present myself in a particular way. This was back when I lived a little bit more from my ego, before I woke up. And then I also want to just let you in, the introduction that was given about me sounds, I don't know, I was kind of like, oh, that sounds pretty good. But before the mystical, I was a completely and radically different person on a path that was going downhill very slowly. I'll tell you a little bit about that in a moment. And and then the other part of me that I want to share with you is kind of the passions of where I am right now in life in terms of just the deliciousness of living from a place that really recognizes the divine. And so my topic this morning is the higher heart of manifesting. I love the idea because when you think about your heart, the heart is the nexus where heaven comes together with earth through us. And so what's really important to know about that is that there's a language of the heart. There's many, many languages. I call them the languages of God or the languages of the divine. And so prior to my waking up in 2001, I was among the sleepwalking dead before zombies were popular. I was working in corporate America, and I had done all those things my ego wanted me to do. I had worked my way up the corporate ladder. I was making six figures, and I thought that was going to bring me happiness. And it brought some luxuries. I was having a really good time going out to spas and taking fancy vacations, but it wasn't feeding my heart. And it wasn't feeding my heart because I was chasing after all of the wrong things, because I didn't understand the language of my heart, let alone the other languages, the subtle energy bodies. And so consequently, I started to go through some changes. So back then, I was moving, from my late 20s into my mid 30s, and I started to have like early onset of certain things going on in my life. I had the early onset, some issues with blood pressure, and I was a smoker and a drinker, and I didn't take really good care of myself nutritionally either. And so I was also at that particular point in my life, I was suffering from panic attacks and hypochondria. They kept getting worse and worse. They started in my early 20s. And it started to get a little bit debilitating. I tried to medicate using, alcohol, and I became very friendly with my doctor over the years because I was always rushing there with all kinds of ailments that they couldn't find anything. My heart was telling me a lot of stuff back then that I didn't understand. I just thought I was reacting from fear. And they would run the EKGs and all the tests, and everything was fine. And then, lo and behold, there was that day where my airy-fairy friend wanted to do some voodoo on me, which was in the realm of what is called, it's integrated energy therapy is the name of the modality, but the practice falls under the umbrella of divine energy medicine. And divine energy medicine is simply, you have things like acupuncture, acupressure, reflexology. There's a lot of things that fall under the holistic alternative umbrella of energy medicine. But divine energy medicine just simply means that you're aware of God. You're aware that there is something wonderful and magnificent beyond your wildest dreams that is back of life. There's a wisdom and there's an intelligence that can just blow your mind. And so that's the distinction. Because you can go to an acupuncturist, and it is a divinely inspired modality of energy medicine, but you don't have to be aware of God, and you don't have to pray or anything. when you do it. But if you add that element in, then you're starting to cultivate into the realm of miracles. And I'm all about miracles. I'm also all about fun. I think your spiritual practice should be a lot of fun. I love adventure. I think some of the main reasons that we're here on earth, that we incarnated into this realm of duality. We chose to be here. As a matter of fact, we're living at the consequence of every choice we've ever made. Every single choice, for good or for bad, we're living at the consequence. And so kind of keeping in theme with the higher heart of manifestation, it becomes really important to understand the languages of the divine. Because I kind of boil it down to a couple things when it comes to manifesting. A lot of people got very excited quite close to maybe 10 years ago now when The Secret came out and really highlighted the law of attraction as though it was something new, and it's been around forever. So part of what I really believe is that when you connect with your authentic desires, and those are the desires from your soul, the desires that God kind of placed within us, that we want to experience through our human bodies and our human life in this world, in these bodies right now. So when we connect with our authentic desires versus our inauthentic desires, the inauthentic desires was what I was chasing after when I was sleepwalking, because I didn't know what my authentic desires were. As a matter of fact, back then, I didn't even really have a lot of passion, and I was really jealous of people that had passion. That's why jealousy is a great indicator that you want to do some inner work. Once you start to dig around, and if you don't know what your authentic desires are, it's really simple. You just ask. What brings me joy? What brings me happiness? And the universe will respond. Aligning your intentions and your choices with your authentic desires would be a really good next step. We do that with prayer. And then clearing the blocks that would prevent us from receiving the answered prayer. That can be where some of us get into a little trouble because we don't understand the languages of God. And then once your answered prayer shows up, to just gratefully and devotionally rejoice in the experience. That's a real good way to not only enhance the experience right then and there, but to also bring more of them. Because like I said, I think we're here to have fun. So understanding the divine languages, there's many of the languages. There's the language of nature, the language of the flowers, the language of the animal kingdom, the language of astrology, where we look at the celestial bodies and the stars and the planets and the signs for truth and guidance, not to foretell a future. Well, you can loosely use it for that, but it's really about finding truth. The one thing that all the languages share in common is that they all lead to the truth shall set you free. Because what are we all looking for? We're all looking for wisdom, and we're all looking for truth. And then there's the language of our human energy field, our energy body. Like, who are we? When we get to planet Earth, we don't generally have a really good user's manual. We kind of get a really loosely, very inaccurate user's manual with regards to the physical body. It's like, brush your teeth, take a shower, try to keep your hygiene pretty good, maybe sometimes just so we don't offend people. But really, there's so much more, because there's the physical body, there's the emotional body, there's the mental body, there's the spirit or bliss body, the karma body, and then there's the trauma body, or as HeART totally refers to it as the pain body. And that's the one that can sometimes cause trouble. Because if you don't understand how to interpret the pain body or the trauma body, a lot of times we start to bring on what's called suffering. And suffering mostly comes from a lack of divine discernment. And what we really want to do is to be able to understand the truth and understand. Does anybody here like pain? No, not a big fan of pain. However, one of my goals or intentions for today would be for you to have a little bit more of a like of honoring pain, because when you understand what pain is, which is just an alarm, it's just an alarm that wants to wake us up to something. And so if we didn't have pain, if you take your hand and you stick it into a fire, the pain is going to tell you to pull it out. And if you didn't have the pain, you might leave it in there, and then you might not have a hand anymore. And I'm assuming you want your hand. So pain is not a bad thing. It's something that we just want to honor and understand, so that when the alarm goes off, that we can wake up to it. There's a great acronym for pain, which is pay attention inside now. And if you allow, one of the principles, the foundations that we lean into, that we know that we stand in, that we believe in the New Thought traditions, is that God is an omnipotent, omniscient, I'm going to say omniamorous, all-loving presence that is so alive and thriving everywhere, that there's good everywhere with God. It is what backs and undergirds all life in every space and every place. So it would stand to reason that even in bad or pain, there's good. And so if any of you have ever had a situation where you've had, one of those dark nights of the souls where it feels you're just going to kind of break down, if you harness it and you look for the breakthrough, it'll make it a lot easier and a lot more fluid. And so back in the early 2000s, I was going through kind of a complete quantum change. I did 180 degrees. I went from, like I said, living a life, I guess you would call me a degenerate to a degree, because I was living a degenerative lifestyle. When you're sleepwalking, or when you're unaware of the divine languages, when you don't know that, what that emotional anguish is, or if you don't know what the mental anguish is, if you don't know what that little rash means, if you don't know, because the universe is always speaking to us, and it is always self-correcting. It is always, you start to wander away from the laws of nature, because the laws of nature is probably our greatest guide on planet Earth. Nature knows how to do everything perfectly and magnificently, and man, do we try to just twist that up a little bit. But when you follow the laws of nature, and there's the natural flow of our human energy field. And so that's what I kind of wanted to bring it into, and tie it into the manifestation. So in your heart center, everybody's probably familiar with your heart organ and the heart chakra. And then there's the higher heart, what we call the higher heart, and then there's the lower heart. The higher heart is the pure heart. That's where our authentic and magnificent desires are. The heart center is also the nexus. It's the joining point, the meeting point from the heavens to the earth in our lives. Our heart knows how to take the energy of our soul and bring it into an experience that will bring us joy. And that is where the juice is. That is where wanting to be alive on planet Earth is. The lower heart, that's where the trauma body would store your sadness, despair, things of that nature are in the lower heart. And so a lot of times people confuse the higher heart and the lower heart, and they say, oh, my heart is calling me to do this. But you have to attune and align to be able to hear the divine voice. In Scripture, in Matthew, it says, the eye is the lamp of the body. And if therefore your eye is bright, your whole body is also lighted. So in essence, your eye is the eye of your life is your perception. And so if you're misperceiving things, then your life is not going to be so bright. But if you're in divine right perception, then your whole body is bright. And then your whole life is lighted. And it is so much more fun and so much more joyful. One of my favorite quotes from A Course in Miracles is do not make the mistake of thinking you understand what you see. For when you allow the Holy Spirit to interpret what you see, then you will truly understand. And so to be in a place of divine alignment, of divine discernment, where you can understand, makes all the difference in the world. But most of us, we don't understand. I mean, so when I was got enveloped in this world of, and first of all, years ago when I was on this kind of downward spiral, and quite honestly, I most likely would not be here today if I had stayed on that path, on that degenerative lifestyle, because I was getting all the warning signs. It's like that movie, Bruce Almighty, when Jim Carrey's like, give me a sign, and he's driving down the road, and there's all these signs coming, and he's just ranting and raving and complaining, so he can't see the signs. It's like, go this way, go this way. It's like, oh my God, he's just so caught in his own misery, so caught in the trauma body. And so we want to take time and be still, and that's where we really dive into our practices of meditation and devotion and music and high vibrational frequencies and start to understand the languages. And so I broke into this world of divine energy medicine where I started to become aware. Prior to this, I was a psychic turnip. I really didn't get it. People were talking about like, oh, your chakras. And I'm like, whatever. I don't know. If it's gonna make me feel good, bring it on. What I didn't really know was that the very first time, that was a precursor to an immaculate healing. And an immaculate healing to me is that you are one way 1 minute, and you're radically, in a blip, in a second, your life is changed. You are different. And it's like Einstein says, you can't solve the problem at the level that it was created, because that would be the definition of insanity. You have to rise into something higher and understand the language of your energy body. So just little simple things, like understanding that, when I was younger, well, I'm going to back it up a little bit. I'm just going to quickly share a story of my heart. So to understand the language of my higher heart. My higher heart was yearning when I became a little bit more aware to listen to my higher heart. It was yearning for more authentic and delicious and meaningful relationships in life. And I was looking out into the world, and I was seeing people having these really deep and profound and meaningful relationships. And you want to be kind of aware of like what really grabs your attention? What would you really so like to have? But then there was something residing in my energy body, in my trauma body, that was preventing me from having those. And I used to get really jealous of those people, like, oh my God, and they run of them, they're hugging, and it's just so warm and cozy and intimate, and you see the authentic sharing, and they just love each other, and I was like, I want that, and I was like, okay, but stay out of my hula hoop, stay away, because that's what my trauma body was saying, is like, I can't get intimate. And so I went and I set my intention that I am going to allow myself to have intimate relationships. Well, they always say be careful what you ask for. It's kind of like the caveat emptor of spirituality. And you want to make sure that, if you're ready to receive your transformation, if you're ready to receive the answer to your prayer, boom, it's done. If you're not ready to receive your prayer, which means there might be some trauma blocking you from receiving that prayer, then you will be ready to see the prayer. And that's when people always go, oh my God, I prayed for it, and then the exact opposite happened. And it's like, no, that meant it brought up the thing that needs to be cleared so that you can receive your prayer. Don't misinterpret it. And so I was sitting in meditation, and I'm wanting to cultivate and bring in more intimacy and more joy, because I could just feel the deliciousness as I was witnessing in other people that I was depriving myself of. And so I was sitting in meditation. I had done some energy work. I had sat in meditation, and all of a sudden this bubble comes rising up, like in the Good Witch and the Wizard of Oz. That bubble comes down. It was actually kind of pink, and then in the middle there was like this movie playing. And when I was younger in elementary school, I was abused and bullied and a little bit tormented. And back then it was really wasn't fun. That was not fun. And so it took me back to this time, and I saw this video, this movie playing on a screen of the time. There was this kid, Bobby. He was like the leader of the bullies. And he would, occasionally physically abuse me. And I remember, well, I didn't remember because it was suppressed in my blind spots of my cellular memory. But the memory came up on the day where I was like, I hate you, and I want you dead. Because that's how the ego wants to resolve things. Get it out of here. And so that bubbled up, and I was like, oh, what am I going to do about this? Now remember, we're living at the consequence of every choice you've ever made. And if I've chosen somewhere along the line to hate someone, that doesn't go anywhere. That sits suppressed and dormant in your cellular memory, but it's 25 years later. I forgot all about it. I had no conscious recollection that that was going on. And so I chose, and this is where you want to really be authentic, and I was, it was pretty easy for me. I chose to want forgiveness and to love him. And so immediately I felt the relief in my energy body. And then the very next day, I go to Borders, before they went out of business. And I'm buying that next copy of whatever spiritual book I was going to buy. And I'm standing in line, and I look over, and I see this girl, and she's like, Keith, and I'm like, Lynn, and I'm like, oh my God, it's somebody I went to elementary school with the very next day. And so we chat, and we catch up, and she goes, oh, I just want you to know, I'm so glad I ran into you. We're having an elementary school 25-year class review. And I was like, oh, wow, that's so much. She's like, we couldn't find your information. I'm so glad I ran into you. So I gave her my information. And then we leave, and the kind of the euphoria of just seeing her and catching up is like, and I'm like, oh, Bobby's gonna be there. And sure enough, it's a month later, and I go, and I'm just praying that it's gonna be amazing. And it was. He was there, and let me tell you, he was not the nicest person to a whole lot of people. But the minute I chose to forgive him with all my heart and soul, the universe moved mountains. I mean, 25-year elementary school reunion, who has those, So we hugged it out, it was connected, and it was deep, and it was authentic, and it was real, and something had changed in his life, something had changed in my life. And so I'm just gonna kind of conclude. I could go on, I would love to go on, because there's so much more to know about your energy body, to know about how just like simple things, like a small little headache or a little pressure in your third eye, what that can mean. And when you allow yourself to be still and know that I am, it will lead you to anywhere and move mountains for you. And so one of the things that I notice is that a lot of times people, they, you move into these spiritual communities, and you kind of get like, ooh, isn't that fascinating? You're kind of on the sidelines and you're looking in, but you don't really get in the game. Maybe you read the book, maybe you come to a service or something, and you kind of get fascinated. You get fascinated by all this. And to me, one of the most powerful things, in addition to meditation and prayer, is having a sense of passion and enthusiasm. And that's definitely one of the side effects and byproducts that came up. And so what I want to close with is just let you know that if you can allow yourself to move into an enthusiasm of thriving, to move from being fascinated with spiritual practice to being enthusiasted by spiritual practice, and allow that divine enthusiasm to just flow through you, it will set off a domino effect that will surely inspire you and bring more joy and more love and more prosperity. And the true root of manifesting is making sure that you allow the divine, that you allow it to be authentic with your innermost desires of your heart, of which most people aren't even aware of what those are. So to do the inner work, I just simply invite you to take the challenge, the charge, to go from being fascinated to being enthusiasted, and if you already are, then to being enthusiasted even more. I thank you for having me here today. Have a beautiful day, and I just give a, I used to be one of those people back in the old days that was not a real good tither because I was just like so constricted in my, like, oh my God, this is mine. And so I just want to open up, in the law of circulation, when we truly do realize, like the Oath of Manifestation says, when we truly do know that God is our source, and you can't outgive God, then you know that source of supply is coming through you, it is super easy to give from that ceaseless supply. So I just invite you to not only do that, but to have an awareness with whatever you're giving, to just hold that as though it's just infinite potential, and to bless it and to know that it comes back to you minimally 100-fold for all the good that is going on in this community. I just invite you to go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, hello, can you hear me?